Hey guys, I hope everyone had a fantastic weekend. And listen, I'm loving the posters. Uh, you guys worked really hard, and I appreciate that. I appreciate all the frustration and everything that you guys have been through since spring break was extended, and um, this is still the extension of spring break, right? That's kind of what it feels like. Um, but I when I'm doing my final video, well, I don't know if it's the final video, but it's the final instructional video for this class. Rather than thinking about all the cool stuff we've done, my mind just kept going to all the stuff that we didn't get to do that I had planned for us to do in class. And yeah, this semester caused us to have to miss out on a lot of stuff. Like I really, really wanted us to watch The Golden Voyage of Sinbad. If you ever get a chance to watch any of those old timey Sinbad movies, they're pretty cool. Um, the you look at the era that they were created and the special effects, they were actually pretty ingenious. Um, but the storyline is good as well. Um, there's so many things, so many more things that I wanted us to do, but I look back, we got a lot done. We read quite a variety this semester. We started out with an epic poem that had a lot of biblical references in it. The oldest one that was written down, where we have that original written on written in cuneiform on the clay pieces, and that was Gilgamesh. And then we read Lycurgus. We did mythology and fables and fairy tales and allegories, and who could forget the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. That certainly was a classic. And then of course we did what else did we do? Um, we did Art of War. We did 1001 Nights. Oh, Legend. My favorite Chaucer, Legend of Good Women. We did Shakespeare, of course, A Midsummer Night's Dream. So there was quite a bit of variety. Um, but I don't know. I guess I'm just lamenting the fact that the semester's over, and I wish it wasn't. And someone keeps texting me. Um, but yeah, here's some things that I want you guys to kind of take away from this semester. If I haven't drilled it into your brain enough, I want you to take away how the written word and the spoken word as well, but the written word can really have a lasting influence on people in so many different ways. Whether it's just society in general and their way of thinking, the way they start to do things, the way they maybe start writing, the way they start performing, what they, how they do editing, or if it's, something a little bit more substantial like education or military, religion, medicine, psychology, those sorts of things. Um, it's interesting how literature, things that aren't true. I mean, where the stories themselves are not fact based, are not based on truth. You hear that there's a grain of truth. So it's interesting that something that is considered fiction could actually be so impactful to the world. But it does happen, and we see that, and we've seen that again and again and again, and we certainly have seen things that are maybe more impactful, or that at least impact a wider variety of things that are out there. And we know that they all of these things we know influenced literature. And where there's literature, then of course there's always going to be drama or film. And so it's easy to see those influences. sometimes it's a little harder to see the others. But they do exist, they're there. And I would say, government, military, politics, education, religion, what are some of the others? Medicine, psychology, family and relationships. Those are probably the most, I would say, the most prominent ones. I probably have left something out. But those are the ones like that always seem to kind of come up. But it's important to not only to recognize that those influences exist, but it's also important to recognize to what extent we let fictional works influence those things. There's nothing wrong with being influenced by those things, because think of people, like these people that wrote hundreds of years ago about concepts that we're really only grasping, fairly recently in history. And they, they were thinkers, they were philosophers, they were people that were kind of ahead of their time with some of these concepts. A lot of, I don't know if you guys have ever heard this thing about Star Trek. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. So, such a big Star Trek fan. At one time, all my animals were named after Star Wars and Star Trek characters. That's a side note. But something that they said about Star Trek was, and this is Star Trek, I think was ended, I think, in 1969, if I'm not mistaken. The original series. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but like the original James T. Kirk and all that. And then fast forward to say the 1990s, 2000s, whatever. A lot of what they talked about or instruments that they had, concepts that were presented, actually came to fruition. And a lot of scientists took concepts that Gene Roddenberry had come up with and started working on those things and actually made them happen. I mean, they're like, that's a cool idea. I wonder if this could actually come to pass. And so he was ahead of his time in his thinking. And so that's very cool that concepts that he came up with that at that time in the 1960s were like, no way. Like, there's no way you're ever going to be able to have a communicator, or touch something on your clothing and be able to, someone can hear you across the way, or, and all kinds of things. Think about this. The moon landing, okay, was in 1969. Yes, I'm one of those people that believe people actually travel to the moon. I also think the Earth is round. So, how crazy, I know. But yeah, so people were just actually, we landed on the moon in 1969. Gene Roddenberry had us traveling, light years to different planets and different moons and different solar systems and all this. So, and he, not that he knew about these things, he created them. But it wasn't a concept that was so far-fetched that scientists didn't look into it, and lo and behold, well, guess what? There are other solar systems. There are other planets. There, and all this, all these crazy things, that he came up with. Yeah, we still haven't learned how to use the transporter. Oh, if only Scotty were still here. But there were so many things that that were introduced in that book. I mean, it started out as a book series, Star Trek. So many things that were introduced then that really got scientists' brains like going like, if that was real, that'd be so cool. Let's see what we can do. And then they worked on it, and sure enough, it came to fruition. Not all of the things clearly, but a lot of really cool things. Things that back in the 60s people were going, no way, this will never happen, you know. And it's, I think about a lot of times my grandmother used to talk to her about what is it like for you having come from the time that you were born and living through the age of all these newfangled things. I will never forget when I was a little kid. We, for Christmas one year, everyone chipped in, like I guess her kids chipped in and bought her a microwave. Oh, she was so excited. She was jumping up and down. But you think about, and that's, by the way, something that's kind of introduced on Star Trek. But you think about those influences, and how if Star Trek hadn't happened, we might not have microwaves we might not have them yet. But writers, when they let their minds go, when they really get creative and they start, coming up with things that maybe seem a little off at the time, but they can kind of see the future in it. We can learn from that. Some people are just ahead of their time in certain ways. And certainly a lot of the people that we have read were ahead of their time in that way. Lycurgus, ahead of his time. Sun Tzu, ahead of his time. So many of those. Some people influenced us in different ways. Not ways where really actually new concepts or new things came about, but just maybe new ways of writing and how we would think about then. It kind of put us on a different path of our way of thinking. The allegory and fables and things, that was a very influential type of writing, because we learned differently, we taught differently, and we sent messages differently. And we used all of those for that sort of thing. And so throughout history, and certainly it's not going to stop. It didn't stop with Sun Tzu. These types of influences will continue on. We will continue to influence society, government, religion, education, families, et cetera, with how with what we write, with our ways of thinking, with introducing new concepts, with how we deal with religion, how we deal with, and so forth. I think that there will be, after this whole situation with us being sheltered in place, I think that we are going to be seeing a completely new kind of influence emerging in writing. I think a lot of people have had time to sit and write, sit and think. And I think that's going to come across. We may not see it right now, but maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line, oh yeah, that was that piece that came from the time that they were all sheltered in. There you go. That's how things like that happen. Continue to think about influences as you read. It's just a cool thing to think about. It's a cool concept to think about how we are so influenced by the written word. Of course, our greatest influence, that is the written word, should be God's word. And that's the perfect example of how one piece of written work can influence so many different things, entities, people, concepts, ideals, ways of thinking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on and on. But always, I think you should always be thinking about that as you read and considering the possibilities of those future influences. And try to always keep yourself moving beyond just literature and into life itself. Okay, that's all for now. Until I see you guys in our meeting on Wednesday, see ya. Bye.